power of a single moment with One Mo Moment. Get ready to hear the pivotal moments that have shaped the lives of extraordinary individuals. From inspirational stories and professional breakthroughs to personal anecdotes and life-changing decisions, One Mo Moment uncovers the essence of what drives us forward. Listen to conversations with industry experts, creatives, and everyday heroes, each sharing their unique journeys and valuable insights. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and moved, because one moment has the potential to change everything. Now here's your host of One Mo Moment, Mo Gerhardt.
Welcome to another special episode of One Mo Moment, the podcast where we explore the pivotal moments that shape the lives of extraordinary individuals. I'm your host, Mo Gerhardt, and today I am beyond honored to welcome a guest who has not only inspired me personally, but has also touched the lives of countless people around the world. Our guest today is Ernie Johnson Jr. He is esteemed sports broadcaster and beloved host of TNT's Inside the NBA. Beyond his illustrious career, Ernie is also known for his profound personal story and his dedication to family. This interview is incredibly meaningful to me because, like Ernie's adopted son, Michael, as many of my listeners know, I also had muscular dystrophy. In this episode, we'll discuss Ernie's career, the impact of his family's journey, and the lessons he's learned along the way. So whether you're a sports fan, someone facing your own challenges, or simply is looking for inspiration, this conversation promises to be both moving and motivating. So let's get started. Mr. Johnson, welcome to One Mo Moment. It's an absolute honor to have you here. And without a doubt, this is right towards the top of my list of Blackberry Moments.
Well, I love hearing that, but here's the deal. If this is going to continue, you call me Mr. Johnson one more time, I'm going to be having the technical issues here. So it's Ernie or it's EJ or it's Hey You. But Mo, it's an awesome day for me. I've been looking forward to this all day, and great to see you. Great to meet you after all these texts and emails back and forth to be able to see you face to face. So thanks for having me on here, man.
Yeah, and what's unique about this podcast for me is you're honestly the first guest that I've had on that I really don't know, or where there hasn't been a friendship or anything like that beforehand. So this is also a new experience for me as far as just the podcast goes. But you mentioned it's as far as being able to meet and talk with each other. I've been worried this whole time that maybe I was being catfished or something like that. And, it really wasn't going to be the real. I've had to pinch myself. And I think, every other night, my girlfriend's probably sick of me talking, to her about you and just hoping and wondering that this is actually going to fall through. So I am just so elated and excited and just thrilled.
Well, yeah, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, all right, so why don't we actually start right there with Blackberry Moments? It's within your book, Unscripted, you go into detail as far as how that originated, what that means within your family. But for maybe some of my listeners that aren't familiar with your background, your story, and just that term in general, can you share what is a Blackberry Moment?
Well, it goes back a long, long time. It goes back about 60 years, as a matter of fact. So I'm playing Little League Baseball when I'm 8, 9 years old. I think I was 8 at the time. And our team's in the field, and the guy on the other side hit a ground rule double. And if you're not a baseball fan out there, ground rule double, ball that bounces over the fence, and the guy gets to base. So our left fielder and center fielder went to get the baseball. And they didn't come back right away. So we had to go out and look for them and see, where they were before the game could continue. And we put out to the chain link fence, and we could see the ball about 10 feet past the fence, but about 15 feet the other way were the left fielder and the center fielder eating blackberries in the middle of the game. So they had just, they kind of put the game aside because, man, wild growing blackberries out here. So they were filling up. And as I grew older, Mo, and hopefully a little bit wiser, that really became like a modern day parable for me. It was just one of these things where I said there were so many Blackberry moments out there. If you are willing to find them, these sweet, unpredictable moments. And sometimes you just need to step away from the game, whatever that game is that you're involved in. That can be work, that can be whatever is occupying all your time. And sometimes you need to be able to step away from that and recognize that there are these sweet moments to be had. And so those became Blackberry moments. That's become kind of a mantra in our family. That anytime we do have these moments that are sweet, these moments that we take the time for, we call them Blackberry moments. And so that's where it is. And that's it was kind of the foundation for the book Unscripted that I wrote in 2017, because there are so many of those moments out there. If we have the mind to see them, the eyes to see them, the heart to detect them, and they are what makes our lives extraordinary.
Well, like I said, this is certainly a Blackberry moment for me, and also at the top that list of Blackberry moments, because this is definitely extraordinary. So thank you. So, I mean, as far as your sort of background and into broadcasting, I was talking with you just a little bit right before we started recording. Also mentioned in that book that you had actually had the interest or envisioned possibly becoming a high school English teacher and then coach at that level. That's exactly what my dad was. He was that high school English teacher and baseball coach, also coached volleyball at the school. But to me, hearing that, it's been sort of heartwarming to see the different connections that I've been able to find in parallels between our families. But I do want you to be able to talk about your relationship with your father. Because once again, maybe some listeners don't know, Ernie Johnson Jr. is a major league baseball player, and then beyond that, a well-known broadcaster for the Atlanta Braves. And so you've followed those steps, but talk a little bit about your closeness and that relationship with your father.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with two older sisters, and my dad playing professional baseball. Now, this is back in the 50s. He's playing for the Boston Braves and the Milwaukee Braves. So I was born in 56. He retired in 59. And so I never really had the great opportunity to watch him as a big league pitcher. Like the way my sisters were able to. But I mean, my whole childhood was just, in the front yard, swinging a bat, playing catch with my dad. And I grew up with this love for baseball. And so that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, it was never this conscious, well, I have to do what my dad is. I just love the game. And so my plan was to try to get a professional baseball player like he was. There's only one problem there is you have to have that same talent level if you're going to achieve that goal. And so that's really where, after I played 1 year at the University of Georgia, I walked on as a freshman and was told to walk off as a sophomore. But I did have that 1 year of playing college baseball. But it's at that point when you're saying, okay, now you're cut. What are you going to do? And that's where I'm thinking, I could be an English teacher. I was an English major at the time. Be an English teacher, a baseball coach in high school. I keep my hand in the game and also do something I love. I've always loved the language. And at the same time, my dad was a broadcaster at that moment. I used to hang out with him at the stadium all the time. He would always, anytime school wasn't in the way on school nights and that kind of thing, but he would, especially in the summer, he'd say, I'm going down to the ballpark, I'm calling the game tonight. And I'd go down there 5 or 6 hours before game time with him and see how he prepared, and then sit in the booth and listen to him call the Braves games. And the thing that, again, he never really pushed me in that direction. He never said, this is what I do. You should do this too. But once I tried it on the campus radio station at the University of Georgia, they said, hey, you're getting the games free, and you love sports and you're covering games. That's where it started, and then thankfully I'd been able to turn that into a career. You go from working at the campus radio station to trying to get a TV job, and you go from Macon, Georgia to Spartanburg, South Carolina, eventually to Atlanta, and eventually to Turner. And geez, been there for 35 years now. So that's kind of I try to condense the story, but it's never that easy. But that's where the relationship. My dad was my best friend. I mean, and even when I got married, he was my best man. So I've always treasured that relationship. He was one of a kind. And lived 87 wonderful years, and so I'm just always he set the bar very high, and it's always just been my goal to try to keep on making my way toward that bar.
Yeah, I can relate to that wholeheartedly. As you mentioned, growing up, baseball was also my dream, even after being diagnosed. I always dreamed that there was gonna be that and somehow was still going to be able to make it on in the major league ball field. And I had that vision that all of a sudden there was even as late as when I was in high school, that there'd still be this cure. And then I would walk on to you mentioned being a walk-on. Well, I was thinking of being a walk-on at college and, being one of those guys that comes out of nowhere all of a sudden, and still makes it to the bigs and even beyond that. At times I even thought, well, maybe I'll be the first manager in the pros that's in a wheelchair and, have to figure out ways to make dugouts accessible, this, that, and the other. Just have my just have my pitching coach go out there all the time to make those changes. But definitely that was still in my mind, not just as a young kid, but then even into my teens and beyond. But what was that like for you, just to be able to have those experiences of being able to be like in a major league clubhouse? I can't imagine what that had to be like, being around all the pros.
Mo, it was nuts. And I tried to never take that for granted. It was, none of my buddies were able to do this. Yeah. They couldn't. And I told them about, I was talking to Hank Aaron by his locker the other day, or Phil Necro was showing me how he holds the knuckleball. It's like, I always realized how blessed I was to have that kind of access because of my dad's job. But yeah, anytime I was at the ballpark, there was always a trip to the clubhouse first. I'm just walking around and seeing things that they shouldn't see, and trying not to act like the kid who's like, got my head on a swivel. And it was just like, you're here, Dad's doing his job, and you're just kind of walking around. But I never forget seeing I remember, I won't name any names, but a backup catcher on the grade is back in the inning, walking through the clubhouse with just his shower shoes and smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, hold it, is this really a big league clubhouse? What's going on? And smoking a cigarette. And so, that was, there are certain images you just can't erase. That unfortunately is one of them.
Yeah, it's funny. My dad actually was born and raised in Baltimore and was only a couple blocks from Memorial Stadium. Mentioned sort of that clubhouse atmosphere for whatever reason. That just put a picture of Earl Weaver in my head, his desk smoking one, and right there in his birthday suit or in his skivvies, as I know he was to do with the press. He came in, but yeah, definitely a different world. But as I said, I can't imagine just that excitement as a young boy to be able to have those experiences.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you love the game, that was just like, and I spent hours, just leaning up against the batting cage and watching Hank Aaron take BP and watching, and watching when Dale Murphy came up and everything, it's just like it was a dream. It was a dream childhood. That's the only way I could possibly put it.
Yeah, and without getting into maybe specific players or anything like that, were the majority, did you have like conversations? Were they easy to talk to? How did they sort of handle the relationship with you?
Yeah, I mean, they were very accommodating, but it's not like we would sit there, for 20 minutes before a day and talking, hitting philosophy or anything like that. But it's, hey, how's your little league team doing? Hey, good. How you hitting? Oh, good. And you're a pitcher too. How you, it was those kind of things. Um, but it was just, I consider myself able to say, oh, yeah, I know him, and like if I walked in, hey, there's Ernie, so, it was that kind of a deal. I didn't want to be a pest,
Right.
but I didn't want to just sit in the corner either and shrink away. I mean, my dad had given me the confidence to have a good, strong handshake and talk with these guys and don't be afraid.
Do you think some of those early experiences helped you later on in your broadcasting career as far as being able to talk with athletes? People that we'll look at, or that I'll look at on TV and as, these same people, but obviously in your profession and in your career, you have to be able to relate. You have to be able to have those one-on-one moments. Do you think being exposed to that as a young child helped later on in your career?
That's really a good question, and I haven't thought about it that much, but it's true. I mean, and I think one thing it teaches you is that, what, these guys are really good at what they do. They're professional athletes, but they're just folks like us too. And the more you get to just converse with somebody, and you say, and I told my dad, later, I said, that's Daryl Evans is really nice. What a good guy. He's just like a regular guy, and it's like, hey, the message to me was, look at your old man. He played professionally. He won a World Series. He's just a regular guy too. And because everybody who would listen to my dad on radio and TV, and they still do it. He says, yeah, I had a chance to meet you, Dad. He just seemed like he was the same guy on the air that he was when I'd seen him at the drugstore. I said, that's what he is. The problem comes if you get carried away with that and then you think you're something special. And I think we've run into those kind of guys in any walk of life or in any business. But I say the vast majority of them are just guys who were supremely gifted to play a sport, but were also just their husbands and dads. They had the same stuff going on in their lives we got going on in our lives. And so you don't treat them, you don't put them on some pedestal like, I'm not worthy to talk to this person. It's like, I realize what you do. And again, as I grew into a broadcaster and had to talk to these guys on a regular basis, there's no room for that to just say, well, I certainly wouldn't want to upset you with any of my questions, or I'm humble. It's like you're doing your job, and talking to athletes is, going to come naturally to me since I tagged along to the ballpark with my old man.
Yeah. So you're telling me that Mo Gerhardt sitting here in my living room now with all the interviews that you've gone through in your life, I just asked you a question that no other interviewer has ever asked you before?
I've never heard that question.
All right.
I've never heard that question.
I'll put that one down on my resume.
We can end it right here. It's done.
No.
It's done. You
That's
win.
just the beginning. That's just the beginning.
But that's amazing, Mo. It is, Mo. It's amazing because I've done a million. I've interviewed a million people, but I've done a million shows, and that is the first time I've ever heard that question. And it's a good one, and it made me stop and say, hold on, you come up with that question.
I like it.
That's really a good one.
I'll put that feather in my cap, as they say. Now, with all the different broadcasting experiences you've had across multiple sports, is there, you don't have to maybe think of one game, but are there any highlights or anything that you can think of that you were just like, wow, I'm here at this game in this moment and broadcasting this to the world?
Yeah, I think there have been a few of those where sometimes you realize, man, I can't believe I'm doing this right now. And like, when we used to do the Open Championship, the British Open, if you will.
For golf.
And Jack Nicklaus is, yeah, Jack Nicklaus is playing his last round in a major at British Open at St. Andrews, and it's on a Friday afternoon when TNT has the coverage, and I'm watching this scene unfold, and by this point, because we're following him stroke by stroke to see if he's going to make the cut at possibly play the weekend, and then it becomes obvious he's not going to. So him playing the 18th hole at St. Andrews is going to be the last time he plays a major championship hole. And we could see from where our booth was, as the day went on, the crowd just grew along the streets there that surround the 18th at St. Andrews. And it's just this sea of people. And then suddenly it's this mob there to watch Jack finish out his round. And watching it is one thing, and then calling it is another, because that's one of those times where the less you hear from me, the better. Because folks at home want to witness, they want to watch this, they want to hear it, they want the pictures to tell the story. And we're just trying to, in the words of Fern Lundquist, who was one of my mentors in golf commentary, he used to say, you're just a caption writer. Capture the moment. You don't have to say a lot, but write a caption. And and then he birdied the 18th hole, his last hole at St. Andrews, and it was everybody's, their tears, his wife's there. It was a scene. And so I'll never forget that. I'll never forget, Olympics in Norway when Dan Jansen, again, this was a little deep. This is, speed skating, which, remember Dan Jansen's story?
I did. Oh my gosh. That's one of, from my childhood. I've always been a huge Olympic fan. And honestly, it was also aside from being a major league ball player, the other dream was to, be able to wear the stars and stripes, the red, white, and blue, and represent my country. And I vividly remember that, because it wasn't too far beyond actually the point where I had been diagnosed. And what I also remember is seeing my parents' sort of reaction to everything that was going on as that storyline was being told, and their emotions being so raw that it then basically I absorbed that, and I felt that through almost my parents' eyes. And then, obviously when he came back then 4 years later, that's where I remember then too, and he got that gold medal, and I'm not mistaken, even the world record. And it was
in 88.
In 88,
that story had started. Yeah.
I broke down.
He lost his sister. Yeah.
Yep. The cancer, right?
Right. And he's in Calgary, and he's the best in the world, and he falls twice. He falls in the 500, he falls in the 1,000. And it's like, this, for speed skaters, I mean, it's just like, you just don't see that. They're so, it's just, they skate as well as they just walk from, it's like, so to see somebody who's the best slip and fall twice and have their medal hopes dashed, and then in France in 92, he doesn't win, doesn't medal, And then here it is, as you point out, at 94, he's in Norway, and he doesn't win the 500, doesn't medal there, and so his last chance is in the 1,000.
Yeah, which is like he was
And he
known
was,
the least for that event too. Like of all the events,
yeah,
that was his least specialized event.
yeah. And so what does he do is, wins the gold with the world record, and then takes a victory lap with his baby,
Yes. Yeah.
who is
Yep.
named after his sister who would die, Jenny.
Yep.
Oh, I mean, no, I'm saying they held this at what the place was called the Viking ship. This beautiful stadium.
So you were on the
That
call
looked
for
like
that?
an upside down Viking ship. I mean,
Yeah.
from the outside it was spectacular, and inside you have the most knowledgeable speed skating fans in the world. All these, you know, predominantly Norwegians, obviously.
Yep. Yep.
But every country has, the Dutch have their flags, the U.S. But these folks know speed skating stats like kids grow up knowing baseball stats or basketball stats.
Yeah.
They can quote, oh yeah, this guy, he's 427 tonight, or and they know, oh no, this guy in the 500, his split is more. They know that stuff cold, and so they knew Dan Jansen's story so closely. They knew exactly what was on the line. And so when he crosses the line in world record time, he's taking his victory lap. You talk about emotions in that place and just the adulation that was coming out of the crowd. And again, that's one of those, you're standing here calling this thing, and it's like, how lucky am I to be sitting here to witness this? Because those are the moments you never forget. Those just transcend sport. That's just that's just humanity, and it's just awesome.
Wow, I can picture them. They've got those full body suits on. Pulling that hood off. Doing that lap.
Right.
And I did not realize that you were on the call for that. That had, like you said, that's almost just breathtaking even to think about. I understand.
It's great. Yeah, and the thing is, see, we're working with CBS. CBS and TNT were working together on the games in those years. So Dick Stockton was doing speed skating for CBS, and I was doing speed skating for TNT. So my call would make the TNT broadcast, his call would make the CBS broadcast. And so we both got to experience something that was absolutely, it's such a storybook thing. It's almost so corny that if they presented you with this, you'd say, take it back to rewrite. That could never happen.
Right.
And,
yeah, it's definitely one of those.
But it happened and we saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even going to ask you to try to top that one because, like I said, I remember living through and watching those races and just the emotion. So I can't even begin to fathom what that was like to be there in person. So we'll definitely, we'll stay with that one as one of those amazing events that you were able to be at. I do want to then transition a little bit more into your family life. That's also where obviously there's lots of connections and where I was really drawn to your story, to also Michael's story, but to give some of the listeners a little bit of a background there too. You and your wife initially had 2 children, and from everything that I've been able to read or understand, is in your mind that was the dream. You had your 2 healthy kids, and boy and a girl, and couldn't think of that much more. But then your wife had sort of different plans, so to say, and why don't you share a little bit as far as how the initial adoption for Michael actually developed?
Yeah. Well, when it happened again, we had 2 kids, Eric and Maggie, and I was at work one night, 1990, somewhere around there, and came back from work, and my wife said, "You know what we need to do?" And I'm like, chicken or fish, whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
It's good with me. She said, no, this goes deeper than that. I said, okay. And she said, I think we need to go to Romania and adopt a child. And because she had seen the ABC News 2020 story about these Romanian orphans after the revolution. But yet, the special needs kids had just been forgotten, basically.
Yep.
Just were housed in these orphanages. And the story that ABC did was just heartbreaking. Cheryl had watched it. I had not seen it. But we did some research and talked to some folks who had been to Romania to try to adopt. And we decided to go ahead and do that, not knowing what we were going to find there, Mo. You know, we didn't, it's not like they said, okay, you're in. Okay, here's a picture. Here's his name or her name. Go pick him up. You know, be back by Tuesday. She went with this group, not knowing who she would meet. You know, if anything would happen, we were just open to the possibility of it happening. And that's where, actually the first orphanage she went to outside Bucharest, they brought this little guy out, and he's nearly 3 years old, couldn't walk or talk. And Cheryl called me from Bucharest. I was working in Atlanta, and she kind of told me the story, and it was like, this kid is so much more than we can handle, but I don't know if I can go the rest of my life wondering what happened to him. And I'm not trying to sound heroic here or anything like that, but it's like, I said, well, I'm home. It's like we had decided we were going to try to give somebody over there, one of these kids, another chance. And this was the child. This was the child. Cheryl knew. And I could tell in her voice that she knew. And so she brought him home the whole process took a couple of months. She was more worried about me being home with Eric and Maggie for 2 months. She thought that. These kids are not going to get a vegetable for 2 months. Well, I'm watching them. And she was pretty close to right. We did have a lot of peace. But it was like, brought him home. And then he was the first of the 4 we adopted. We adopted a little girl from Paraguay a couple of years later. Then in our 50s, we adopted 2 girls out of foster care, and they were in foster care in Ohio. We adopted them when they were 8 and 9. They're 22 and 23 now. So, but those last 3, Michael's situation was just different. There's the first one we had done, and then we didn't know exactly the extent of what was going on with him. We knew we had a lot of developmental delays because he couldn't talk, just made noises. And then, the doctor that we took him to, while we've got the hood up, let's check everything. And, and he was a little suspicious of how, because Michael had, a foot that was all turned in, and we got that fixed. And then he needed leg braces. And then the doctor was suspicious of the way of his gait and said we need to do a little biopsy. You and I talked before this thing started. You got the same scar Michael had on his leg, where they cut into his thigh and said he's got muscular dystrophy. And so, then you learn a lot about that, and it changes our lives. This says, we're going to have to go about things a little different way here. And, hey, Mo, he lived 33 years, man. He lived 33 years with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. He's a miracle. And we got to witness it, and so anytime anybody says like, oh, well, it must have been tough for you, it's like, see, we got to see him. We got to see it every day. We got to see him every day. Got to watch him grow and develop. It was, and so, it I'm not saying it was not easy, but it's like if that's what's handed to you, that's what you do, you know. So you have nurses overnight his last 10 years because he was on a ventilator like you are, man. You know, I know how that
Yep.
machinery works. It was amazing. We're sitting here, and it really gripped me because before we started, I know you had to have your lungs suctioned a couple of times by Megan, your nurse there, and it's like, I haven't really thought about that much over the last couple of years since we lost Michael, but that was a daily thing with us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and all the things that went into that. Any kind of a beep out of the ventilator was like I knew what that meant, you know. Or I could get
Yeah.
and Michael would look up sometimes and say, "Okay, I'm okay." I say, "Okay, good." So
I've given that okay plenty times.
Yeah.
Yep. It's all good. It's all right.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
just know that as I'm sitting here talking to you and you inspire me, man. It's you're awesome.
Well, I think now's the time, maybe even to say this, and I know it will mean a lot to you, but I love you too.
I got you, man. That's a whole nother set of stories from Michael that have molded this family. You know that shoot, I'll just tell it. Because that's
Please do.
because that's I mean look, here's what's hanging right here on my lamp right here is released. That's I love you inside there because like here's one of the places that Michael's story will just live on forever is because here's this guy who goes from being able to walk for a while, then needing a wheelchair, and then so he's in high school in a chair and can't communicate that great, but he has made a lot of progress and fixates on cars and vacuum cleaners and lawnmowers. Those are his three favorite things in the world, and has this kind of this Rain Man memory. It's just like, you tell him what kind of car you drive, and he always remembered it. That's how he would associate you. You could tell him one day, and then 5 years later, you could see him for the first time since then. And Michael, you remember me? And he'll say, Honda Accord, silver, black interior. And it was like, it blew people away. So this coach at his high school comes, this brand new high school. And this coach's name is Phil Beaulieu. He comes from Indiana down to Brazelton, Georgia to coach basketball. Meets Michael one day. Michael quizzes him about his car. Coach, what drive? And he tells him. And then as the coach is leaving the room, Michael says, "Love you too, Coach." It was Michael's favorite thing to say. It was "love you too." Even if you didn't tell him first. And I'm thinking he heard that a lot in our household. He heard "love you too" a lot. The guy didn't speak till he was 8 years old. Finally was able to break through.
But that's after actually
but then,
the doctor saying he would never talk, right?
Yeah, they said he's never going to bond. He's never going to talk. He's never, and all this. And doctors know a lot, but they didn't know this kid. And so this coach says, I need him on my team because I wanted to teach them maximum effort, which I know it takes all of his strength to just to move his hands, to drive his chair and that kind of thing. And he said, I want him to teach my team having a heart for others, because he said, man, he hit me with that "love you too, Coach." He said, that was really powerful. And so that became this kind of the foundation for Michael's basketball experience with this coach. And to Phil Beaulieu's credit, and this goes kind of back to when I talked about Blackberry Moments and being able to step away from the game for these Blackberry moments. Here's a teacher and coach who would step away from the game when he's teaching and take 5 minutes out of a day to tell students, before you guys go and play, I need 5 minutes to tell you the story about this kid that I know who's on my basketball team. His name is Michael Johnson. He was born in Romania. He was adopted, and on and on. But he'd always tell him about this, love you too. He said, because I know a lot of you are walking around the hallways of this high school using sign language, and most of it's with one finger. And these kids are kind of coach. He said, well, let's learn next. He said, let's learn love you. I love you. I love you. That's sign language for I love you. I said, and when you tip your index finger to the other person, it means love you too. So he's teaching these kids. He's not only not only a basketball coach, he's teaching all of his kids in high school about this love you too. And so I'll see him, and Michael goes up to get his blanket and stuff after like 3 years of being on the bench with Coach Bolaire. Fans are, here's another senior. You've seen him on the bench, Michael Johnson. And I look up in the student section, and they're standing like this, man. And the lesson that Phil Bolaire taught everybody was there's value in everybody. You know what? Don't be swayed by the exterior. Don't be swayed by he doesn't speak as well as the rest of the kids. He doesn't walk like the other kids. He's in a wheelchair. Don't be swayed by that. There's value in everybody. And what Phil was able to point that out. To give Michael a spot on that basketball team. And to teach this high school full of kids what love is. And look, I'm not going to turn this into Sunrise Sermonette. But only God does that. Only God takes a basketball coach from Indiana and working for Romania, sticks him in a gym in Braselton, Georgia, and teaches a school about love. And I got to watch that. I had the best seat in the house to see that happen. And that's why this is huge. That's what we do in our house, man. It's what we do. It's love you too.
Yeah. No, I'm actually glad you got up. I know faith is a big part of your life. It's also a big part of mine. I've talked about it in multiple episodes prior to this one. Actually, I've typed in a couple notes here as you were talking. I want to go back first when you were talking about your wife, how she knew when, Michael, when they were first introduced, that he was the one that you were going to be bringing back. I wanted to almost sort of even supersede that. It wasn't just that your wife knew, but what went across my mind was that God knew.
Sure.
To me, that's another one of those situations that where God knew, and just for all of those things to fall into place, because I think also when your wife went over, you were looking for a healthy girl, and come back with basically the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, because when you're adopting, there's all kinds of paperwork, you get lots of home studies and all that, and so, we were kind of like, a little girl under a year old with no permanent handicaps, and we'll give her the medical attention she needs. But yeah, that's the thing. And then all of a sudden, it's a nearly 3-year-old boy. Just how going on. Then any of us had any idea what was going on. Nothing. Would not trade it for a second, dude.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And the other thing you mentioned, Michael's gait. I know in your book you described it, and baseball fans will definitely, understand this a little bit better, but Bobby Cox and his swivel hips, and that was sort of the gait that you compared Michael to. I know for myself, I've always, and in my family, we've always used the explanation that it's like a a 9-month pregnant lady, that sort of got that sway and a little bit shoulders back. That was my walk sort of growing up.
Yeah.
That's how they always explained it. And then obviously too, going into syllable leader, well, my syllable leader was Stan Molaski. And as a sixth grader, the first organized sport for the elementary school where I went at was basketball. And, he knew I was a big sports lover and all this, but he also knew that that was not something that I'd be able to participate in, but he wasn't going to have any of that. And Coach Molaski brought me in on that team, and I was that student manager, which then honestly opened the doors for the remainder of my life to still be able to love sports and find ways to still be involved. So from sixth grade all the way through my senior year in high school, I was, the student managers on the various teams. I was able to get my high school letter. I still have that jacket in my closet. That's one of the biggest things that will put a smile on my face. And then the friendships that was able to cultivate through those experiences. Bullying is always a big sort of topic that's talked about in the schools, and it's a problem. Well, I always say I'm the product of not being bullied. I'm the product of what happens when somebody who's different is included and not separated because of their differences. And my classmates have made some of the biggest impact in my life more than anyone because they accepted me for me. They allowed me to have a happy childhood experience. And I'll always be thankful for that. And then not only beyond that, but then even into my college years, I actually have my master's degree in athletic administration. And for a handful of years before I was on my vent and had a trach, I actually did radio for the Michigan State women's basketball program and was their color commentator. So it really, like I said, it goes back to, actually I said sixth grade, but it was fifth grade. So it was fifth and sixth. And it was Coach Molaski that asked me to be on that team, have a uniform, be able to be there with the rest of the guys. And that truly was formative and really shaped, to where I am right now talking with the great Ernie Johnson Jr.
I love that story. I love that coach's insight and his, when you're a parent, and look, when Michael was growing up and, you'd get kids who would stare, like you're at the mall, they'd stare at the chair. Stare at the chair where they it wasn't, I didn't hear snickering or blah, blah, but I always invited those kids. I said, "We want to see this chair? Come here, take a look. This thing is pretty cool. Well, why is he it?" I said, "Ask questions." I said, "I love to answer questions about this. I love to let you know why he's doing this while you're doing this." I said, "That's
100%.
That's how we get along in this world is having an understanding of where we are and why we're doing what we're doing and not just shutting it out." I loved having the kids who I'd say, "Yeah, look at this. And this button right here, this racket button, we can go faster. When you get this turtle button, we can go a little slower. This oxygen thing, look, you can feel it, feel the art." And so it's just a part of understanding, and it's just a part of folks having an idea of why some goes this way and some are this way. And we can all get along. And we try to understand where we've been and where we're going.
Yeah, what I remember from my childhood when I was still walking, like I said, that's when the gait was very pronounced, very different. I looked very different compared to other kids. And I remember when I was walking, I was so visually different in the way that I walked. It was scary to other kids or even to adults. It was like I was almost like a freak. Whereas then when I transitioned into a wheelchair, it was a difference, and that's where it was stairs. But then people, it was almost like hush hush, don't say anything for parents, and that's where, as I matured and when I was able to understand what was going on, then that's where I did take that role, like you're explaining, be able to say to kids, "Oh no, it's okay. Here, let me show you this. Let me see. I'll show you how it works. Or this is why I'm in a wheelchair." You know how some people wear glasses because their eyes maybe aren't as strong? Well, it's because my legs, the muscles, they're not as strong. So I use the wheelchair to help me get around. And I always ending like, is it that great that I'm able to have that? And the kids are like, "Oh yeah, that's great." They just want those basic sort of explanations. And I think too, I've always said my mom, I told you my dad was a high school English teacher. Well, my mom was an elementary school teacher and taught between the ages or the grades of kindergarten through third grade throughout her career. And I remember when I was in college, she'd have me come in and talk to her classes, about differences, about disabilities, this, that, and the other. And what I can say is I did that over the course of about 4 years. And from the first class that I talked to, by the time they had reached, fourth, fifth, sixth grade in that same school, and I was coming back to talk to my mom's current classes, those kids were, giving me high fives when I was coming in,
Right.
and, wanting to say hi, how it's going, compared to the very first year when I went in, the fifth and sixth graders that didn't know my story. It was still those stairs. So I've always been a huge proponent that early on in elementary schools, as a country, I think we do a poor job basically trying to explain disabilities. We have a lot of units on, other things, and they're the well-deserved, but people with disabilities, that's the largest minority group in the United States. And it's also the number one oppressed minority group in the United States. And I think a lot of that could be alleviated simply by having better units at the elementary school age as far as what it means to have a disability and be different.
Right.
Because, like I said, I'm a perfect example of what happens when there is that integration and that understanding, and the opposite of the bullying.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. And you know what?
This way.
Michael's presence in our family, Eric and Maggie were tremendous, and Carmen too, in pitching in and helping any way they could with Michael's care. So much so that my oldest daughter is a special needs teacher at the different high school outside of life, and it has like 12 to 14 kids every year in her class. But it was all born because of spending time there and saying, I understand what Michael is going through, and just having that heart for folks. And so, no, I'm with you 100%.
I know what you mean. My older brother, I only have one brother, but my older brother, David, in many ways, he's also been my hero in my life for the way that he treated me growing up. And the way that he treated me was just as his brother. He still picked on me. He still did pranks on me, did this, that, and the other, but he always also sort of knew where that physical line was, where, he wouldn't take it over to take advantage necessarily of that disability. But that's always, when I look at how, like I said, how he treated me, for many ways, he was and continues to be my hero growing up. And it's interesting, you mentioned your daughter. Well, my brother, his wife, and actually here's a couple more connections. So my sister-in-law, she's Korean, and she was abandoned at birth. So she has no clue who her birth parents actually are, and she was just left on the doorsteps of an orphanage in Korea and ended up being adopted by a family in Chicago. And that's her parents. Well, she's actually now also a special education teacher. So,
Wow.
like the similarities and the ties, they just continue to to show up. Like I said,
That's amazing, man.
yeah, she was just picked out of a catalog basically by her parents, Sue and Bill Crawford, and they adopted her, and she was raised in Chicago, and that's where they live now, and they have 2 kids, my nephew and niece, Kellen and Nari. They're the love and joys of my life, and they love their Uncle Mo just like, any other nephew and niece would love their uncle. And to them growing up, my chair was also cool to them to be able, to see what Uncle Mo could do in his chair and how fast Uncle Mo could go. So I just, so many things that just touch my heart too, to be able to hear you recollect and have those experiences in your life.
Yeah, the kids used to think it was cool when I would tell Michael to aspirin off his chair, because when his back was hurting a little bit, you would flip the switch, and if his legs would go up, and he'd go down. We call that astronaut. And kids, whoa, look at it. And, for a kid one in the 50s, you saw astronauts and theaters. For a lot of kids these days, it's like all we ever see is astronauts floating around inside the space. But no, they used to have those things that tilted back and while they ate their space food sticks. But it's when Michael could show him what his chair could do. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, actually one of my favorite pictures with my nephew, I've got a few of them, but one of them is right after I had gotten a new wheelchair, still had my old one, and we just took him outside, and I was racing my nephew. He was in my old chair, I was in my new one. He's got his Star Wars helmet on, as he's riding in that chair, but he was just having the time of his life. And it's amazing. Kids are definitely wonderful.
Unbelievable.
I couldn't have a talk with you without talking about inside the NBA, without talking about Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny Smith, and just the amazing connection and relationship that you have, not only on air, but it also seems like it continues, and it's the same way off air. What has that show Inside the NBA meant to you?
Well, it's it's one of these things where when you watch the progression of the show, like when I was hired back in 1989, basically the NBA and on TNT was just getting going, and so my first year in that chair was 1991, first season. And there's no way, Mo, that I would have thought, you know what, 35 years later, I'll still be hosting that show. But that's what's happened. And the key to the whole thing with those guys is that, I think you kind of hit it on the head. Off the air, we couldn't, we love each other, man. We respect each other. We love each other. Any of us would do anything for the others. And we've all had stuff in our lives going on where we were able to do that. We were able to be there for each other. So you can't, the chemistry that we've had. I mean, that's the term most folks will actually show. Oh, like your best chemistry. How did you get the hit? I don't know how it happened. We've got, 4 guys who love each other and love talking basketball, and realize that, this beats the heck out of working for a living. That's what you stick around watching basketball. And so, I just think that, starting out, it was just me. Then it was me and Cheryl Miller, me and Dick Versailles, me and Richie Thieves, and then Kenny comes in, and then Chuck. And so the fact that Kenny and Charles and I have been together for more than 20 years is amazing, especially in TV terms. Very few units last that long. And the only change we've made is bringing Shaq in there. And so, and he's fit writing. He's the world's biggest kid. He's an amazing. He's got an amazing heart. They all do, and so. Then there's so much more to it than just the basketball side. And so extremely blessed to have been doing that as long as we have.
I think it's well known right now the contract, the TV contract, and sort of being up in the air. I know TNT is sort of trying to. They've taken that to court, I guess, to try to see if they can match one of those offers. But I even saw it today.
You got the story.
Yeah. I even saw today where, Charles has come out now and said that whereas initially I said he was not looking, but was retiring after this next year. And now he's saying he's not planning on retiring. But there's no way to know what obviously is going to be occurring. But all that being said, does that add some sentimental aspects going into this season, not really knowing what happens after this upcoming NBA season?
Yeah, I mean, Mo, if this is our last year of doing Inside the NBA on TNT, it's going to be a hell of a year to watch, man. It really is. We have always enjoyed doing that show, and now, if you think about it in terms of, well, this is the last one, we're not going to leave anything unsaid. That's for sure. And we'll have as much fun as we always do. You can control what you can control in this life, and that is precious little. You can control how you treat people. You can control how hard you work. You can control your attitude. And aside from that, other stuff's out of our control. But I will rest assured that the show that folks have grown to love over the years, you will not be disappointed in the 24-25 edition of that either. I just know that deep in my soul.
Yeah, well, you mentioned control. If I could control time, I think I would definitely put a pause on it right now so that I could just continue talking with you for hours. And honestly, even through this, we haven't even been able to touch on the fact that you yourself battled through non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and had to share that with your family when you received that news. And obviously and thankfully been able to overcome that. I just real briefly, if you don't mind, as a father, when you were having to share that with your family, was there things that you were able to take from raising Michael with all of his challenges that were in life that you were able then to carry forward in your battle with that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yeah, I mean, I think back to those times, and it's what you learn, Mo, is people have been affected by cancer in so many ways, whether it's like me, myself, or, people you work with people in your family. And while it may attack one person, it attacks really the entire family, because there's a lot of anxiety, there's worry that goes with it, there's concern. And in my case, one of the things I really wanted to do with the kids was make sure that all their information was coming from me and Cheryl Ann, and not from somebody in their geography class and because it happens, it's like,
yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Caleb says his uncle had cancer too, and he died. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Eric, I understand that. I said, here's what I have. And I will always be upfront with you. So please don't go to anybody else for any of your information. Come to me and I'll shoot straight with you. I'll tell you how my treatments are going. I'll tell you what chemo's like. I'll do all this stuff. I said, don't listen to anybody else. So I think being upfront with kids and your loved ones is one of the most important things. And another is, and this was passed on to me by one of the guys who was doing one of my PET scans one day, when he said, remember, you may have cancer, but it doesn't have you. And that made sense to me. Cancer was not going to rob my personality. It was not going to rob my positivity. Sure, I was going to have days where I was not feeling very good, but it was not going to take away who I am. And so that has always been like the first thing I tell people. And what you find when you have cancer is that it brings with it a responsibility and an opportunity to help the next person through it. And I have had so many opportunities to talk to folks who are about to start chemo, or somebody who's just been dying. A friend of mine calling me and said, hey, my buddy, he's got the word that this. And so you spend time on the phone or face to face and tell them your story and try to help them through that. So I think that's one of the things that it brings that responsibility with it. So look, I went through that. I've been through prostate cancer, skin cancer. It's like, okay, here we go again. How are we gonna take care of this? And part of it is having the friends, the family, and the faith to fight through it.
Yep. Yeah. And you mentioned that responsibility, and that's something I've also taken on for myself. And I love talking to families that recently have a child, it's been diagnosed with, whether it be Duchenne's or another form of muscular dystrophy, and also talking to the parents about, the importance of their role, and also allowing that child to have experiences and being able to find their interests and their loves, and to just be able to be a kid, but then also to be a role model, because I didn't have a role model that was in a wheelchair or that had a disability when I was growing up. I was always trying to find someone that looked like me, and I never did. And so that's why I've purposely tried to live my life to the fullest, if nothing else, to be able, for that next generation, to be able to pass the torch on to them, and they can be able to then have, new firsts and new experiences. So there's so many different things that resonate with me. Honestly, thank you so much. You mentioned with cancer, not having you, the mantra that I've lived my life by is, it's not the diagnosis that determines your outcome. And I have that tattooed on my right thigh, so it's the last thing I see when I go to bed at night and the first thing that I see in the morning. And, I was told at 8 years old that I'd be in a wheelchair by the time I was through with elementary school, and I wouldn't live beyond my teens. Well, I was walking up until my junior year in high school, and here I am now in my 40s, obviously well beyond my teens. So it is something that I try to live by, that I try to share with others. More than anything, I cannot thank you enough for agreeing to do this with me, to be able to meet, to be able to talk, to be able to share with you. You mentioned sometimes it's those negative things in life that turn out to be reasons that are the whys. And for me, that was true when I had the exact same experience with Michael, as far as when I had respiratory failure and came as close as you can to dying. Through that whole experience, that's where I met my girlfriend, Jennifer, who I wish I could introduce you to today, but she's not here right now. As a matter of fact, she's literally calling me on my phone right now as I'm talking about her to you. But, she was a nurse, and I met her through that experience. And you can't tell me that was not God's work, and that was not part of God's plan. And I'm so thankful for that experience. So honestly, Ernie, thank you for joining us on this incredibly special episode of One Mo Moment. It's been nothing short of a privilege and an honor to hear from you and to have you share your journey, both from your remarkable career and your deeply personal life. Thank you for your time and opening up about the challenges and triumphs you've experienced. Your story, Michael's legacy, continue to inspire and to lift us all. To my listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to One Mo Moment and leave a comment, leave a review. That's how I know how to help support your needs.
And let me say this before I speak.
Yes.
Let me say this before we're done. You asked me to do this. You think I'm going to pass on the chance to talk to a miracle? There ain't a chance, man. So this has been so good for my soul today. I appreciate you having me on. Doesn't get any better than this, man.
Well, that is honestly, once again, a work of God to be able to connect this guy here in Michigan to you there down. I'm assuming you're home in Georgia. Yeah. And that also, there's lots of negatives about social media, but there's some amazing positives that can also come from it. So
just gotta use it the right way.
That's for sure. So like I said, so if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to One Mo Moment, leave a review, make a comment. Your support helps me continue to share these powerful and inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore more pivotal moments with extraordinary guests. Until then, remember to cherish every moment, embrace the stories that shape our lives. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day. And always remember, it's not the diagnosis that determines your outcome. Thank you. And thank you, Ernie.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of One Mo Moment. We hope you were inspired by the incredible stories and insights shared today. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Don't miss our upcoming episodes, where we'll continue to explore the pivotal moments that shape extraordinary lives. Stay tuned for more inspiring guests, powerful stories, and valuable lessons that will motivate and move you. Join us next time for another unforgettable One Mo Moment. Until then, remember, it's not the diagnosis that determines your outcome.